It's day 12 of the US-Israel war with Iran. And over the next 10 minutes or so, we'll bring you our daily briefing and tell you all you need to know and the key updates on the conflict. 3 commercial ships are hit by projectiles in the Gulf as 32 countries agree to their largest ever release of oil reserves in an effort to calm the markets. The US military says it's eliminated 16 Iranian mine-laying ships which were threatening the Strait of Hormuz. That's the world's busiest oil shipping channel. Israel launches a new wave of strikes on Lebanon and Iran, and there's shock in the capital Beirut after an apartment block was struck early this morning. Residents say they never thought the neighbourhood would be targeted. And when President Trump was asked about the war, he said that the US is not finished yet. Well, today, 32 countries approved the largest release of oil reserves in history. The International Energy Agency members agreed to release some 400 million barrels of oil to curb rising prices caused by the Iran war. It comes after attacks on shipping in the Gulf. 3 commercial ships have been hit by projectiles, including this Thai-flagged cargo ship, which Iran's claimed responsibility for. Iran has warned ships not to go through the Strait of Hormuz, a crucial route for the world's oil trade. Well, let's speak now to our correspondent Nick Beek, who is in Dubai. Nick, on social, there have been a lot of questions about the ships which were hit today. Tell us more about what's been happening.
Hi, Regina. Yeah, well, these 3 strikes happened in pretty quick succession. The most significant was the one you mentioned on that Thai-flagged vessel. 23 people were on board, 20 were saved, but there was a search operation that was ongoing many hours ago to look for those 3 other members of the crew. The Iranians said that yes, they did carry out this strike. It happened in the Strait of Hormuz, as you say, which is so critical to transporting oil. 20% of the world's oil passes through there. And as you also mentioned, today we had these 32 countries from the International Energy Agency agreeing to this biggest ever release of oil reserves, some 400 million barrels, about 4 days worth. It's worth pointing out this is not a case of just turning on a tap and all this oil flowing out. It's an indication to the markets, really, trying to soothe them, appease them, and it's a suggestion that the producers will provide more oil in the days to come. So that happened. Also, finally, here in Dubai, the international airport, there were 2 drones that were intercepted near the airport. Officials saying that 4 people were injured, but worth pointing out that this is the 2nd time in 5 days that Iranian drones have been able to get right up to this airport. It's the biggest, the busiest in the world in terms of international passenger traffic. Last year, they dealt with more than 100 million passengers. So this is a concern that once again, these drones have got all the way up to the airport before they were apparently intercepted, Regina.
OK, Nick, thanks for the latest there. Now, as well as a new wave of attacks on Iran, Israel's carried out extensive strikes in Lebanon, where authorities say nearly 600 people have now been killed. Loud blasts rocked Beirut overnight and into today as Israel continues to pound the Lebanese capital, targeting what it claims are Hezbollah sites. Well, this morning there was a strike on an apartment building in the centre of Beirut. Our correspondent reports from the street outside.
I am here in Beirut, in the heart of the capital. This is a residential area. An apartment was struck in the very early hours of this morning. Of course, the damage is extensive. Nearby buildings, cars and apartments have been extensively damaged, and people here are in absolute shock. This is in the heart of the capital. People I spoke to here told me they never considered this area to be in danger or that it could be targeted by any strike. But this has happened this morning, and this is the 2nd time in less than a week that the capital, Beirut, is struck.
That's Karine Torbay there. Well, the impact of the Iran war is being felt beyond the Middle East, across the world. One leader taking a particular interest is Russia's President Vladimir Putin, who's held calls with the presidents of both Iran and the United States in the past week. Our Russia editor Steve Rosenberg has the view from Moscow.
Well, in Moscow, President Putin has called for de-escalation of the Iran conflict. But Russia can see opportunities too from what is happening there. First of all, financial ones. The jump in oil prices means more revenue for Russia from its energy exports at a time when the Russian economy has come under increasing pressure. And more money means a larger war chest as Russia continues its war of attrition against Ukraine. And this financial windfall, I think, we can expect to be even larger if, as some of the Russian newspapers today were predicting, America eases oil sanctions against Russia. But I think the Russians spy diplomatic opportunities too. The Kremlin is offering to mediate in the conflict, hoping, I think, to boost its profile in the Gulf and in the Middle East, and also boost its relationship with Donald Trump, which it sees as beneficial, I think, to Russia's war aims in Ukraine. This is why I think Vladimir Putin has been careful not to criticize Donald Trump publicly and personally over the Iran war.
That's Steve Rosenberg there. Well, Ukraine sent teams of military experts to the Gulf states to help them defend against drones from Iran. From Kyiv, James Landell explains the impact the war's having there.
There's been a mixed response here to the war in the Middle East. Some fear that it could distract the world from Ukraine's defence against Russia's invasion. Others fear there could be a shortage of air defence missiles because so many are being fired off in the Middle East. And of course, everybody's aware that rising oil prices could fuel Russia's war economy. But the government here also sees this as an opportunity. Many countries have been knocking on Ukraine's door saying, give us some help with interceptor drones. And that's something that Ukraine is a world leader on. They've been keeping these skies safe with these machines for 4 years. So Ukraine hopes it can raise some vital funds selling drones in the Middle East. It can win some new friends and allies there. And it can just stay relevant, part of the international conversation. In other words, it hopes to use this war to present itself as less of a war-torn victim and more of as a useful ally. And if it could achieve that, it would be no mean feat.
Well, attacks inside Iran are continuing, and Iranian state media says that at least 1,270 people have now been killed since the start of the war. New images of Kerman Airport show the impact of a recent US-Israeli strike with black smoke billowing. Well, BBC Persian's gathered messages from inside the country, which have been voiced up by some of our colleagues.
I made some food, I read a book, I played a computer game. Then found out a girl that I went to school with has been killed and her body still hasn't been found. Why do we have to experience such horror when we are at the prime years of our youth?
My sleep schedule depends on the bombing now. I go to sleep at around 6 or 7 in the morning and wake up at 2 p.m.
12 days into the US-Israel war with Iran, and where do things currently stand? Well, that's one of the most searched questions consistently, with people asking, when will things be over? Well, joining me in the studio to help answer that question is the BBC's international editor, Jeremy Bowen. First of all, Jeremy, this afternoon, President Trump said that we could do a lot worse, in his view, in terms of the US. But where do things stand militarily for both sides?
Well, militarily, I saw a briefing with General Brad Cooper, who is the head of CENTCOM, which is the component of the US military which is doing the fighting there. And very bullish, enormous combat power, paying tribute to the soldiers, sailors and airmen, air women, absolutely positive about the success of the war. They've sunk to the Navy, is what he said. But of course, you look, there's one important factor here. The Strait of Hormuz, this vital economic lifeline, is closed. That's without the Navy, according to the Americans, and with all this combat power. And why is this happening? It's because it's the battle, the sort of tactics that the weak use against the strong, which people call asymmetric warfare, sort of unequal warfare. And so the way that the Iranians are doing it, and they've planned this for a long time, you can see, is that they know they can't, if they just stand up and try and go for a bare knuckles punch up with the Americans and the Israelis, they're going to lose. So they're trying to go around the edges, they're trying to spread it, they're hitting unexpected places, they're going for air defense systems. They know that if they get a drone somewhere near Dubai airport, people like us will be talking about it. And it shows that they are continuing what they're doing. And of course, for the regime, survival is the name of the game. If they get to the end of all of this and the regime is still there, especially when Donald Trump started off by talking about regime change, he doesn't talk about it now, they will be able to say, look what we did, we survived.
And Jeremy, we talk about this every day, but one of the top questions that people are searching for the answer for is how long will the war last? Now, I'm not expecting you to know the answer, but when we look
That's
at
lucky because I don't know. Yeah.
But in terms of how much firepower both sides have, how much will they have, are we talking weeks, months or years potentially?
Well, there are different timetables at work, I think. That's the best way to explain it. The Americans, Donald Trump has already said a day or two ago, and of course it caused that big oil price spike. And he deflated the big oil price spike, I should say. Donald Trump has already said that they might be getting towards the end of the line, but not quite yet. So they're thinking about an end game, clearly. The Israelis, on the other hand, are pushing ahead. They have declared repeatedly what they want to do is bring down the regime. They're hitting some targets the Americans don't like them hitting, like oil targets, for example. And for the Iranian regime, I think their strategy is they can outlast the others, that they can take more pain than the Americans can take, and that is part of their strategy of survival.
And one question as well is how much this is costing in terms of the Americans and also, I guess, Iran as well. I mean, a country that's economy is not doing too well at the moment.
Look, this is actually a world economic upheaval in the making, if this continues like it is, because the way the world is set up, it's not just the oil that goes through the Strait of Hormuz and the other things that come from the petrochemical industry and from oil and gas. It's also the fact that over the last 20, 30 years, the Gulf countries have been really successful in making themselves into an international hub for air travel, for communications, taking advantage of the fact that they are, I think they're basically no more than an 8-hour flight from most of the world. So they're working out, they've worked out how to use their position, but because they've made themselves important, when that position gets pressurized, damaged, it has big knock-on effects all around the world.
Yeah, well, of course, we're seeing all of that now. Thank you very much for your thoughts for the moment, our international editor, Jeremy Bowen there.